Welcome to Your Life with your hosts, Dr. Tony Hare and Dan DeBruler. Together, we're exploring the questions everyone has about life, love, parenting, and relationships. Tony Hare is an independent certified coach, teacher, and speaker with the John Maxwell team, author and inspirational speaker who lives in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, a master's degree in pastoral counseling, and a doctorate of philosophy in Christian counseling. Dan DeBruler is a retired U.S. Army communications specialist and has spent more than 20 years encouraging listeners through Christian radio.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Dan DeBruler. Dr. Tony Hare is here, and we got some great things to talk about, especially in light of our children being back in school this week. So thank you again for joining us today. Let's get this thing going.
Hey, Dan, it's great to be here with you again today. And yes, school is back in, and as they say, we're back outside. So we know that parents have been preparing for a long time to get their youth back in school, seeing that many parents over the past few years, we've had to educate our children at home, and we found out that that is a great task to take on, especially when you don't have the skill that those great teachers that we have in the administration in our schools, we don't have the skills that they have, the education that they have, the patience that it takes to work with our youth in the academic setting. So first of all, I wanted to, definitely thank all the parents for doing all that they did to keep their children up to speed, and now thanking all those great teachers and administrative staff, bus drivers, and everyone who will take the ball from here or take the baton from here and carry it on. And I wanted to just look at a few encouraging verses of Scripture that will help us as we move down this journey. And one of the ones I wanted to look at, Dan, was in Joshua chapter 1, verse 9, where the Word of God says, "Haven't I commanded you to be strong and courageous?" Because that's what we need our children to be and our parents to be, especially those parents with those youth who are just starting school, preschool, or kindergarten. But we know that you're going to have to be strong and of good courage, and do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go.
When we read that passage, we're looking at the third time the word courageous is used. In that passage in Joshua chapter 1, it's starting with back at verse 6, it says, "Be strong and courageous." Then it says, "Be strong and very courageous." And then in that passage you just read,
yes,
"Have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous?" And it does take courage.
Yes,
this year is going to be the first for a little while really normal school year. I mean, I hate to use the word normal, but you know what I mean.
Yes,
as we get back to a routine that we recognize, maybe the one that we grew up with or have had for the last 20 years, the last couple have been kind of weird, things kind of up in the air. And so as we face this, not only us, but our children need to be able to walk into it strong and courageous.
Absolutely. And I think that was one of the things, or some of the things that we're really going to be faced with is, our youth achieving the academic success that they want to achieve after they get settled in class. And there are some drivers, parents and Dan, that youth run into when youth are not achieving that academic success. And sometimes it has a lot to do with their peer association. So one of the things we want to make sure is that our youth have the mindset to make sure that they begin to create relationships with individuals who are going down the same path they're going down, who want to achieve goals, have goals set, and they have a plan, so to speak, to achieve those goals. Because the influence that our youth have who have a plan, who've made up their mind to make good grades, to study, that influence, or they have the ability to influence so many other youth, and now their leadership will take on a whole different look, and they will become more confident, and that confidence breeds more confidence.
As we head back into the school year, that's where it really becomes evident, how important our role as parents is.
Yep.
How we prepare our children during the time that we have them, and
Yes.
especially when there's a magnifying glass on that time. When we have those summer months, how are we leading? How are we guiding? How are we preparing our children for their everyday interactions with others? And even more so as we send them back into the classroom where we have to take the leash off, per se, and let them go.
Absolutely. And I just want to also share, with us that we have to, as parents, we have to be mindful during this time when we're being strong and of good courage, that we actively support, encourage, and inquire and talk about that academic success. And I mention academic success again because when youth are in school and they are having academic success, school goes along much better. Their school day is much better than one who is not having academic success. When I was in school, Dan, I was not the brightest, crayon in the box. And I used to always try to outwit the teacher, and I always, especially my math class, I knew that I just was not the best at math, and I'm trying to outsmart the teacher, so I'm going to go sit in the first row in the front seat so that the teacher will think that he's got it together, and she will not call on me. She'll call on all the people that sit in the back. It worked for a long time. It worked for a long time, long enough to help me understand that it was not going to work forever. And so I had to begin to study. But I know that there are many youth like myself who think that you're smarter than the teacher. But I'm trying to tell you now, we are not. Teachers have more time in grade than we do, and they prepare themselves for the classroom. And so they would like for us parents to make sure our youth are prepared for the classroom and communicate with our youth. We have had our first day of school, and I really want to encourage parents, really want to encourage them. When your youth comes home in the afternoon, regardless of what their age is, let's talk about what happened during the day. Observe them when they come into the home and take an assessment of whether they had a good day or a bad day before we begin to get on their cases about things that they didn't do before they left home that morning. Let's make sure that we are paying close attention to them so that we can ask the appropriate question or have the appropriate conversation, and we don't trigger some other behavior that may present itself and the conversation doesn't go so well.
The people that I know that are educators have learned to be so many things.
Yes, sir.
To our children as they come back into the classroom, everything from psychologist to philanthropist to philosopher to comedian, as well as being an educator. And so, sitting in the first row, sitting somewhere in the back, probably not going to be the only mechanism you can use to achieve academic success.
Yes.
But, when we, as parents, allow those educators the room they need to do what they love to do,
yes,
to bring our children along. I hear so much about the public school system, and yes, some of that is true.
Yes.
A lot of it is true, actually. However, those teachers, those educators have gone in there by choice.
Yes.
And those who are Christian believing teachers, they have gone in there bathed in prayer, not only prayer by themselves, but prayer by the parents and those that cover those schools. And so when we allow them the room to do what they need to do, we make room for those children, our children, to truly succeed, and especially if we follow it up at home.
Absolutely. And the best way, Dan, that we can help the bus drivers, the teachers, and the administrative staff at school is to make sure as parents that our children know how to respect authority. You see, the respect that we have for authority, if our youth are respecting us at home, they should take that same respect and more to the classroom or in that academic setting. Now, if our youth are not doing it at home, well, they're most likely not going to do it at school. So parents, we have to be very, very, very attentive to our youth's conduct and make sure that we are always modeling the appropriate conduct, because what youth see at home, they're going to carry to the next environment they go to. In the type of work that we do, we're always doing what we call fit circles on a particular behavior that's presenting itself that we want to change. And when we draw that circle, we put the behavior that we would like to change, that we would like to reduce, that we would like to eliminate. We put that behavior in that circle, and then we look at what we call drivers. What are things that could be driving that behavior? And as we begin to look at the drivers, we will begin to even talk to our parents that we are dealing with about some of the drivers to their youth's behaviors. And we want to talk to the youth about some of the drivers to the behaviors. We want to talk with the teachers to try to find out what are some of the drivers to the behavior, because we want to be able to put together some what we call intermediary goals, things that we can work with the family on to help reduce to the point of eliminating those behaviors. And 9 times out of 10, Dan, what we have to really focus on is changing the environment, making the environment conducive for the behavior that we want our youth to present.
You know, every bit of this translates really well into the home life.
Yes,
you know, when we think about it, you know, what you said there a moment ago, you know, it's what we model at home.
Yes.
If we model an environment of respect, if we model an environment where it's conducive to learning and where there are expectations upheld and expectations that are met. You know,
Absolutely.
These things translate well
Yes.
when our children go not just into the educational setting, but when they go into the rest of their lives.
Yes, when they go into the rest of their lives.
These are important things. These are important precepts for us to get into our family and to get into our world so that we can send our children out prepared for whatever comes their way on a given day.
And I think, Dan, that, you know, we had talked before about COVID. And what I think that one of the, and I would say good things that came out of COVID, one of the things that COVID taught us as parents with the youth being home with us, we got an opportunity to experience some of the behavioral concerns that teachers dealt with in school. And a lot of our youth's limitations, whether they were intellectual deficits, whether they were learning disability, whether they were sensory motor problems, ADHD, depression, anxiety, and on and on and on and on, all of those things interfere with learning and or the performance. So I would love for parents to have an understanding, Dan, of their youth's limitations, and I think I'd probably like to put that a better way, of the limitations that whatever issue, or we'll call a diagnosis that a youth may have, or behavioral obstacle that a youth is having difficulty getting over, that's not the youth, that is the behavior they are presenting. So I would like for us to really learn how not to identify our youth by what we are seeing, but realize that they are who God created and they are perfect in every way, and they have the ability to learn as much as we have the patience enough to teach them. But I don't want parents to be unaware and not understand that, yes, little Johnny or little Billy, little Susie or Tyrone may not be able to read as fast or whatever, but that means that at home we have to do our work. A lot of things that have happened, Dan, that I've discovered over the years in mental and behavioral health, especially when we're dealing with learning issues, I find out that the basics were not taught at home. You know, there was a time when mom and dad would be teaching ABCs, 1, 2, 3s. They would be teaching the foundational things so that when our youth get up, they can read, they can spell, they can write, they can do those things. But what I found out is that that has not been as we have not been active in that area as we used to be. And I would like to see parents get back to that, because you're preparing that youth for success. So for all parents who have youth that are getting into preschool, kindergarten, those things, let's get back to the basics, what grandma and them used to do, and mom and them used to do back in the day. We're getting ready to sit and we're going to learn all of these foundational things, because if he can learn the alphabet, he can learn how to spell, he can learn how to write, he can learn how to communicate, make sentences, have a conversation. All of that starts with ABCs, D, E, F, G. It all starts with that.
You know what it really starts with, and I agree with you
Yes,
there,
sir.
but what it starts with is us taking time.
Yes,
us
absolutely.
making our children a priority. You said something there that I heard in another context today, but it translates, again, to use my word again today,
Yeah.
it translates well. You said the behavior is not your child. The behavior is the behavior. You have to separate. And we have to realize, like you said, that child is still one that's made in the image of God.
Yes, right.
And that means all of those attributes, the creative,
Yes.
the thinking, the
Yes.
logical, all of those things
Yes.
exist in that child. So the environment that we create really does determine which direction that child is going to go. And, you mentioned the ABCs and the coloring and the mathematics, all of that. When we begin to take time with our children and we allow them the room to grow, and we show them the steps from the ABCs to the reading, to the forming sentences, to even word problems. I mean, when you trace that whole thing, it comes down to us making and taking time for our children.
Absolutely. I was, had the privilege of talking with a parent last week, and she was sharing with me, and he was sharing with me things about their youth, and they were making statements, he is this, she is that. And I actually had to stop them from making the issue their youth's identity. And we will do that just naturally, just saying things, and it doesn't mean that we believe that so. But the more I talk to most parents, we get so corralled in a diagnosis or what another professional says our child is, but we have to correct that individual and help them understand, no, that's not who my child is, that is what he's experiencing. So Johnny is experiencing an intellectual deficit. Johnny is experiencing depression or anxiety. Johnny is experiencing a social phobia, or whatever the case might be. Now, what interventions or strategies can we put in place to help him think correctly? You see, that will help him overcome that. And I think a lot of times, parents, sometimes we give, and I'll say this very kindly, we give other individuals more authority to speak on our child than the experience that we've had with our child.
And that's very important to note, too, because that carries over for us as adults
Yes,
as
sir.
well. If we allow people to speak things that are just not true
Yes.
into our lives. I mean, just think, I was listening to somebody speak the other day, and he said he was in an economics class, and the
Yes.
professor said, hey, how do you change the state? What's the single greatest thing you can do to change the state of economics, or the economic situation in the United States? And, these were economic students, and they all gave really, really good answers, and they were all wrong. The right answer was let the media open every news broadcast with a forecast or a status of the economy. And after a while, people begin to believe that thing, and they'll begin to act as if that is what
Absolutely.
the state of the economy is.
Yes.
And it's the same way in our lives.
Yes.
If we allow people to speak diagnoses or some kind of proclamation over us again and again and again, eventually we begin to believe that, and we begin to act and behave within that simple construct that they have spoken over us. And the same thing happens with our kids in our home.
Absolutely.
If we say, well, you like to say little Johnny. If little Johnny, well, he just does that. He's ADHD. He just does that. Eventually, it's okay for him to do that because he's already got a buy, and so he begins to excuse his own behavior and then moves on to another one.
Yes.
And so we end up with a bigger problem than we ever really had because of allowing people the room to speak into these situations and allowing that to become what we accept as truth.
Whatever you hear the most, because it enters through the ear gate, what you hear the most, you will begin to do if you're not consciously aware of what you're hearing. Because automatically, you're going to impress that upon your subconscious mind because consciously you're hearing that. And you're going to allow that into your subconscious mind, and you're going to begin to act that way. You're going to lean toward that. The Word of God shares with us in Proverbs 3, and if this is another way that we can freely allow our youth to engage their academic day, because we can't control the day. But the number one thing we can do, according to Proverbs chapter 3, is look at verse 5 where it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own understanding. Verse 6, in all your ways. And this goes for the parents, the youth, the administrators at school, the teachers, everyone. In all your ways, know him, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. And that's for your entire day. When you begin to trust in him, and that Hebrew word trust means to lie down on, to put your entire weight on something. As if we were going to go to sleep, you lie down on the bed. We don't lie down on the bed halfway or not try to put all of our weight on that mattress when we want to lie down. We put the full weight of our body on that mattress and we try to get comfortable. And this Hebrew word for trust is saying the same thing. Put your full weight on God. Put your full weight on him, and don't lean to your own way of doing things, your own understanding. Let God work these things out for you. And that's something, especially for us parents with young children going to school. And I know, Mom, you're worried about, the 2-year-old, the 3-year-old, or the 4-year-old going to daycare or going to preschool. You're concerned because they're not with you. You've been with them so long, and now all of a sudden you've got to put them in someone else's hands. Well, trust in the Lord with all your heart, Be very observant when you go to the school, the places you're going to put them in. Notice everything you possibly can. Take some pictures, you know what I'm saying? And when you go back, have those images of the pictures you took and look at the changes in the environment as you go back, so you can be consciously aware of what's going on with your youth. And for those older young men and women who are in middle school and who are in high school, good and well, we have to trust in the Lord with all of our hearts right now with what's going on in schools. And I'll put it this way, not what's going on in schools, because the school empty has no problems. The school empty has no issues at all. But it's when people come into the school that we have issues. People, we bring our lives into the school and we dump our lives in those hallways, in those classrooms, in the break areas. We take those things there, but let's begin to learn how to trust in the Lord with all our heart. And then Dan, what it says, in all your ways, know him, and he will make your path straight. And this is like an umbrella statement. It covers anything having to do with life. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he'll direct your path.
Again, this comes back to how we lead our family.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't matter if it's a one-parent or two-parent home. What matters is that we place our trust in the right place.
Absolutely.
I heard somebody talking recently about a chair. We walk into a room and we just trust that if we sit in that chair, it's going to hold our weight off of the floor. It's going to keep us from falling. When we learn to trust God blindly like that, when we learn to allow our trust of the Lord to be the driving factor in our life as a parent, as a grandparent,
Yes.
We will begin to assert that into our everyday, every moment life, and that will translate into our children. We can't think that when we send our kids off to school that our responsibility ends. For some parents, I know. They're like, oh goodness, I'm so glad my child's going into pre-K now. I don't have to deal with them. But there are others who are like you just described. They go in and they're saying, oh, they're not going to be. I won't have my hands on them for these 2, 4, 6, 8 hours a day now. Where am I sending them? What does that room look like? And I love that you said, take pictures. If for no other reason, when they come home and they're describing their experience through the day, you have a point of reference. Go in, notice, meet the teachers before the first day. These are all very important things for parents who want a good outcome for their children.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I would really love for parents to do, and I refer back because I get to see over 300 families each year here in Cumberland County, and I in the context of seeing them, I also get the opportunity to see that a lot of our young children or youth they only have the limits that have been placed on them. And when I look at my daughter, Naisha, and raising my granddaughter, Sanaya, I watch Sanaya and I watch how she just turned 3. She doesn't have limits. She will try anything. She doesn't have limits, and she will only have the limits that her parents place on her, that her father, Tyrone, and my daughter, that they place on her. And if they don't place limits on her, she will challenge life. She will reach her maximum potential without the limits that the adults have put on her. So experiences in life will be able to, they will become the opportunities for limits to be there if the child chooses for them to become limits. A lot of times, our parents, we place limits on our youth, and we don't know their full potential. Only the youth knows what they really can do and what they can't do. And if we just are in the stands applauding them on with everything that they do and allow them the opportunity, if they fall, to get up on their own. And tell them, you can get up. I know you can. No matter what their age is, Dan, we have to continue to encourage our children. I'm a very mature man. My father still encourages me to this day. He never gives up on that. He's always trying to help me understand what I can do. I can go a little bit further, no limits on me at all. And I would love for parents to take that piece of advice as you deal with your youth and they go through school Monday through Friday. Hey, man, don't place any limits on them. Tell them to go for it all, because they're fighting from a position of victory. They're not fighting for a victory, Dan.
There you go. So if they're climbing a ladder up onto the top of the house, you may want to suggest that they actually can't fly. But that's not what we're talking about here. When my parents were still living, up until they passed, they would ask one more question, and that would allow me the opportunity to think and to be encouraged. First of all, that somebody else cared. As I'm proclaiming my decision, as a 50-some-year-old guy or whatever, they would ask that one more question, to give me room to think. I think we need to challenge our children in that way, not in such a way that we constrict them, that we hold them back, but in such a way that we allow them to think their way through things, so they begin to reason.
That's right.
And use logic and use what they have learned, and let what they have experienced so far in life become part of their teaching as they continue to move forward with whatever step they're taking next.
And that's what questions do. Questions open the door for creativity and imagination. That's what questions do. Questions give you the opportunity to be free to think correctly.
Yep, and that translates well into adulthood. I think it's something we all need to consider more seriously in every facet of our lives.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Hare, man, time goes by so quick when we're in here. Thank you for being here, for leading these conversations. It's always a pleasure, and we'll see you back again here next week.
You've been listening to Your Life with your hosts, Dr. Tony Hare and Dan DeBruler. Join us again next time as we explore the questions everyone has about life, love, parenting, and relationships. Your Life airs Tuesdays at 2 p.m. on Christian 105.7, and you can always download, listen, and share online. Just look for Your Life wherever you listen to podcasts.